This Too Shall Pass is an essay presented in video form. It includes text extracts, photographs, and cover pages from the Black Film Bulletin, along with current commentary. All photographs are black and white. Some have a bright colour wash of orange or blue over them. The film has a strong visual style. Commentary text is in pink, in a typewritten style. Quotes are also pink with some black highlights, and appear in the large text in the centre of the screen. During current commentary, video menu items play, record and pause are visible on screen. The Black Film Bulletin logo of a close-up eye in black, framed in a circle, with the text Black Film Bulletin to the lower left, remained on screen at the top right throughout. This Too Shall Pass. Decolonizing film. This is a story of memory, migration, movements, and the moving image, a moment captured in the era of the Black Film Bulletin. The pandemic and the social fissures it has heightened reveal the frailty of our coexistence and the urgency of continued negotiation of those principles that bind us together as humanity. In the UK, after hard-won institutional changes followed mass social upheaval in the 1980s, optimism anticipated the possibilities to make lasting advances. The Black Film Bulletin emerged as a snatched opportunity in that moment of optimism. Yet, here we are again. And This Too Shall Pass is the affirmation of hope, steeped in history yet not tethered by it. Definitive moments and movements have always characterized the evolution of Black creative process. As the present zeitgeist pushes the world to reconcile meaning in the rallying proclamation Black Lives Matter, it echoes and reanimates wisdom of the past, movements that challenge the colonial, shifting the dial on the aesthetics of power and representation, and ultimately expanding the lens and language of modern global cinema. The title page of Black Film Bulletin, first edition, Spring 1993, Volume 1, Issue 1, Dr. June Givanni, 1993, Black Film Bulletin co-founder. The Black UK film experience has to be seen in the context of a diaspora experience. The links with Africa, India, the Caribbean, other Black filmmakers in Europe and the Americas supported and nurtured Black film talent in the UK. We give each other prizes, we criticise, we showcase and circulate across national and continental boundaries, often to find the resources and the morale to continue working in film and television. Black Film Bulletin signified a vital space for critical commentary around new Black cinema and Pan-African cinema histories, capturing a significant renaissance for Black filmmaking culture globally in the 80s and early 1990s. In Britain, that history was infused by strong Caribbean and African dimensions, part of a global perspective linked to the concept of third cinema, determined to shed the constraints of colonialism. The Black Atlantic and the movements that rose through America's struggle for civil rights were ever present in the conversation and in the pages of the Black Film Bulletin. A black and white photo of a young black man running along a path between high fences, text overlaying, reads, Black Film Bulletin, Summer 1996, Volume 4, Issue 2, 100 Years of Cinema. Editorials, Wishful Filming by John Akomfrah. A Black constituency, a supportive base for Black filmmaking, is beginning to happen. It's just not the way some of us would like. That's the nature of the beast. Copyright, John Akomfrah, 1995. Those crucial cultural interventions were inspired by connection, the crises, commonalities and camaraderie between leading artists, intellectuals, writers and filmmakers traverse the spectrum of the Black diaspora, invoking pioneer griot voices of early continental African cinema, like Ousmane Sembène and Djibril Diop Mambéty. and drawing from the wisdom of Windrush-era West Indian artists and filmmakers like Horace Ové, Earl Cameron, and brothers Lloyd and Barry Record, who blazed a trail and broke the colour bar in early 1960s Britain alongside other émigrés and exiles like South African director Lionel Ngakane. Cover design. 3 young black men lean against a wall under a road sign reading Harrow Road, West 9. Bumper Windrush Special. Black Film Bulletin. Winter 1997, Spring 1998. Volume 5/6. Issue 4/1. Editorials, Horace Ové. Horace Ové is undoubtedly a pioneer in black British history, and his work provides a perspective on the black experience in Britain. Horace Ové. Reflection on a 30-year experience by Givanni. British Film Bulletin 1996, Volume 4, Issue 2. Trinidad had a proliferation of cinemas when I was growing up. My exposure to cinema started there. Being a West Indian, wanting to direct films, none of us were making films in Britain at that time. My first BBC appointment, the commissioning editor had a shock. He wasn't expecting a West Indian. Black Film Bulletin engaged the works of African and African-American LA rebellion filmmakers like Haile Gerima, Charles Burnett and Julie Dash, as it called upon the bold provocations that black British artists who evolved through the early 1980s Black Film Workshop movement. Among those visionary creators were Black Audio Film Collective, Chedo Film Workshop, Retake, and Sankofa Film and Video, a moniker symbolically derived from the mythical Ghanaian bird that looks to the past to understand the way forward. Editorials, Arthur Jaffa. When the Black British Workshop scene started, I had a very intense engagement with it. Black filmmakers articulating the same issues. What does black cinema mean? Is it desirable? I met John Akomfrah, I met Isaac Julian and Maureen Blackwood. It turned to friendship, trying to create communities around different aesthetic considerations. Copyright, Arthur Jaffa, 1993. And This Too Shall Pass revisits the Black Film Bulletin era via some of its gems. Director John Akomfrah's Wishful Filming launches the inaugural issue with unflinching insight on both the complexities of black aesthetics and an emergent British black cinema. In A Tale of Transitions, British-Nigerian director Ngozi Onwurah muses on the particular politics of mixed racial heritage and black cinema, as experienced through the lens of a biracial woman filmmaker. Director Maureen Blackwood exalts her voice in Home from Home, as Jamaica Ajalon explores the space of black queer cinema. Prolific film producers Nadine Marsh-Edwards holds court with fellow producers Twix Worrell and Muni Kabir, imparting indispensable wisdom. Editorials, Wishful Filming by John Akomfrah, Black Film Bulletin 1995, Volume 3, Issue 2-3. I'm being really polemical, but I find what is going on really interesting. For one, when we started, there were no people who wanted to talk about cinema. Now everybody wants to talk about cinema. That major moment when potentially all the things we talked about, the need for a black constituency, a supportive base for black filmmaking and for black film ideas, is beginning to happen. But it's just not happening in the way that some of us would like, and that's the nature of the beast. We can't become too despondent about it. We have to carry on making inroads by informing people that there are different kinds of black filmmaking. What I want is not what Ngozi Onwurah or Sankofa or Charles Burnett, Met Hondo, Spike Lee, Haile Gerima, Julie Dash, Isaac Julian, or even other BAFC people might want to do, even though I love them all. Black Film Bulletin cover, Spring 1997, Volume 5, Issue 1. Reproduction of a painting. A group of women sit at a table. A man in black tie holds a tray. Editorials, A Tale of Transitions by Lincoln Petaway, from an interview with Ngozi Onwurah by Lincoln Petaway and June Giovanni. The most terrifying for me is that if things continue the way they're going now, There will be no room for people like me, that is, people of mixed race. I am black politically, but mixed race personally. Copyright Ngozi Onwurah, 1994. Black Film Bulletin, Summer 1994, Volume 2, Issue 2. Black and white photo of two women in evening dress, each holds a glass. They are both smiling. Editorials, Home from Home. I want to be writing material that puts black actors in dramatic or comic situations which actually allow them to fulfill their craft. Most of the time, they're not given that space. Maureen Blackwood. Home from Home. Copyright Maureen Blackwood. Black Film Bulletin, 1993, Volume 1, Issue 3-4. It is necessary to realize a body of black queer work within its own context. Burst of Light by Jamika Ajalon, Black Film Bulletin, 1996, Volume 4, Issue 1. Photograph of a young girl and boy sitting on a bench, the boy's arm around the girl's shoulders. Spring 1994, Volume 2, Issue 1. Editorials, The Indispensable. 3 producers, Nadine Marsh-Edwards. Nadine does not take such an optimistic view of Europe and the United States when it comes to the financing of black film. She believes the better availability for film financing abroad notion is a myth unless you happen to be a white filmmaker. It is difficult to find a black co-producer in France to work with, for example. This is without raising the problem of xenophobia and the growth of the right wing in Europe, making the job of trying to persuade people that stories by black people are universal, and everyone can get something from those stories near impossible. The Indispensable, an interview with Nadine Marsh-Edwards. Black Film Bulletin 1993, Volume 1, Issue 2. So many political agendas affect the types of films financiers think you should be making. So I gauge success on the range of work I can make happen. A goal is to make a historical drama about black people in England on the scale and impact of Roots. Copyright Nadine Marsh-Edwards, 1993. Across the Atlantic, director Joe Brewster exerts his contrarian vision. As an African-American cinematographer, Arthur Jaffa questions whether black cinema has indeed been achieved at all. The hybridity of Caribbean cinema is explored through the testimony of legendary Trinidadian artist Horace Ové. Scholar Mantia Diawara examines the limits of colonial cinematic language. Iconic statesman of Pan-African cinema Haile Gerima poignantly articulates the imperative. Decolonizing film. Black Film Bulletin cover. A photograph in shades of orange. 2 faces front on, each cropped by the page edges. Editorials. Editorials. I took the disadvantages and the failures and made something special out of them. Maybe that is contrarian filmmaking. See Joe Brewster. Contrarian vision. Gaylene Gould in Q&A with Joe Brewster, Black Film Bulletin 1996, Volume 4, Issue 1. Editorials, Great Divide by Joe Brewster. On black Europeans moving to the US, he considered them sellouts producing US exploitation films, rather than thoughtful films he associated with Isaac Julian, John Akomfrah, Maureen Blackwood. I reminded him he'd not applied that standard to white Europeans like Hitchcock. See Joe Brewster, 1993. US/UK Special Double Issue. A photograph of a woman standing, head slightly turned, one arm raised, one lowered. Black Film Bulletin, Autumn-Winter, 1993-94, Issue 3/4. When I was at Howard, the very notion of black film was a somewhat radical one. In time, I started to become somewhat dissatisfied with definitions because there's a way in which the response, black film is against Hollywood, has its limitations. What it does is set you up in a binary opposition to Hollywood, which is limiting because it means that if Hollywood has narrative, you have to be anti-narrative. It's kind of absurd. Films that were being given to me as examples of black film would use a classical Hollywood spatial continuity, which in itself is nothing wrong. But I personally began to feel like the rules around spatial continuity are intrinsically linked to the cultural systems that generated those rules. The relationship between camera placements is tied into Eurocentrism. AJ. Cinematographer Arthur Jaffa by June Givanni, Black Film Bulletin 1993 to 1994, Volume 1, Issue 3 to 4. Black Film Bulletin cover page in a blue monochrome, a gorilla standing on a platform surrounded by people in Hollywood tribal costume. Black Film Bulletin, Spring 1995, Volume 3, Issue 1. Editorials. In the House at Vanderbilt. Cinema is 100 years old. Colonialism is 100 years old. Both were developed with a black body, but the roles of black people have not been clear. So how can we talk about all of this in one language? In the House at Vanderbilt, June Givanni, in Q&A with Mantia Diawara, BFB, 1994, Volume 2, Issue 1. It's enlightening for Black America to see Stuart Hall, and the Black British to see Sidney Poitier, or Ousmane Sembène exchanging ideas. Why is it that I learn by reading Frantz Fanon, Dubois, Sembène, Stuart Hall and C.L.R. James more than, let's say, my earliest readings of Sartre or Victor Hugo? It's because their relation to modernity is similar to my own. Copyright Manthia Diawara. How to decolonize film? This challenge, or rather this prevailing cultural question, posed specifically to the makers and consumers of Pan-Africanist cinema and to the luminary voices championing a new black cinema movement in the early 1990s, is the constant refrain that was to reverberate throughout the Black Film Bulletin era. The question and the challenge remain ever more relevant today. Editorials. Our ancestors, those artists who influenced Picasso and others, were not speaking French or Portuguese when they conceived their art. Cinema is the last refuge for our languages. Ousmane Sembène on African Cinema, copyright African Screens, Black Film Bulletin, 1995, Volume 3, Issue 2. Decolonizing film. Intelligentsia of all societies are best when they articulate desires and struggles of the people. They articulated struggles of African ushering in the 19th century defeat of physical colonialists. On invisible neocolonialism, not physical but mental, intelligentsia failed. Copyright Haile Gerima, 1995. Photograph of 3 men from the neck up, 1 in profile, 2 facing the camera. Decolonizing film, Haile Gerima, by Onyechake Wambu. Black Film Bulletin, 1995, Volume 3, Issue 2 to 3. African Cinema, double issue. A photograph of a young man looking through a square hole cut into drywall. Black Film Bulletin, Summer Autumn, 1995, Volume 3, Issue 2 to 3. Decolonizing film, commissioned by Peltz Gallery, Birkbeck University of London, and This Too Shall Pass, a video essay by Dr. June Givanni and Jan Asante. Soundtrack, Dub Morphology, Trevor Matheson, Gary Stewart, produced by Think Cinematic, June Givanni, Pan-African Cinema Archive. Sources, Facebook, Black Film Bulletin, Twitter, @Black Film Bulletin. June Givanni, Pan-African Cinema Archive, June Givanni, filmarchive.com. Instagram, @JG_PACA in uppercase. BFB, thanks. Gaylene Gould, Gian Giovanni, Eve Salmon. Filmmaker voices were brought to the pages of the BFB by great writers and key collaborators who joined the BFB movement and shared the vision. Mabel Haddock, MB-PC, Paul Maeda Burgess, Eshi Oshun, Caroline Hunter, Mahmoud Jamal, Donovan Sinmoy, Kojo Eshun, Caroline Hunter, Pervez Khan, Mike Phillips, Anup Singh, Kubna Mercer, Joe Brewster, Curtis Holder, Chika Onaka, Victoria Moyston, to name just a few. The team that took up the BFP mantle after the African Caribbean unit closed: Andrea Stewart, Onyekachi Wambu, Carl Daniels, Colton Lee & Co. Black Film Bulletin logo.